Red dust swirled through the canyon as Robert Hayes adjusted his scanner and wiped sweat from his forehead. The sun burned overhead on Valdris 7, a frontier world where humans had been running surveys for only 3 months. Everything about this planet seemed designed to make life difficult. The rocks cut through boot soles, the air tasted like copper, and the wildlife wanted you dead. Robert heard Nicole Grant curse somewhere behind him. She was the team's biologist, always complaining about the heat but never actually going back to the air-conditioned base. Luis Mendoza, their security officer, stood watch on a boulder with his rifle ready. They had learned early that relaxation meant death out here. Got something weird on the scanner, Nicole called out. Big thermal signature up in the cliffs. Way bigger than anything we've cataloged. Robert walked over and looked at her screen. The signature was massive, maybe 8 meters long, and it was barely moving. That was strange. The large predators on Valdris 7 never stopped moving. They hunted constantly or they starved. Could be one of those Draknari things, Luis said from his perch. Remember the briefing? Dragon-looking aliens that claim the mountain territories. Command said to avoid them. Yeah, well, it's not moving much, Nicole said. Could be injured. Or dying. Robert made a decision he would think about for the rest of his life. Let's check it out carefully. Luis groaned but followed orders. They climbed the rocky slope for 20 minutes, weapons ready, expecting an ambush at every turn. The thermal signature grew stronger. Then they smelled it. Blood. Lots of it. They reached a flat area carved into the cliff face and stopped. A massive creature lay in a nest made of crystals and metal fragments. Silver scales covered her body, each one the size of a dinner plate. Wings that could have wrapped around a house spread limply across the ground. Her reptilian head rested on the stone, eyes half closed. Draknari, Luis whispered. The locals call them dragons for a reason. 4 eggs sat near the creature's body. Large eggs, each one bigger than a human torso. They were moving slightly, rocking back and forth. Something inside was trying to get out. The dragon's eye opened fully and fixed on the humans. Robert felt his blood freeze. One swipe from those claws would cut him in half. One blast of the fire he'd heard they could breathe would turn them all to ash. But the dragon didn't move. She just watched them with an intelligence that was unmistakable. This wasn't an animal. This was a person. Nicole stepped forward before Robert could stop her. She held up her medical scanner. I'm reading massive internal injuries. Puncture wounds. Burns from energy weapons. Something attacked her. The Krell, Luis said darkly. We've heard rumors. Raiders who harvest Draknari organs for the black market, worth millions on the outer colonies. Robert looked at the eggs again. They were rocking harder now. Those things are hatching. Without their mother, they won't last a day. Not our problem, Luis said, but his voice lacked conviction. We're supposed to avoid contact with native species. The dragon made a sound. Low and rumbling, it shook dust from the cliff walls. She was trying to speak, Robert realized. She was trying to communicate. Nicole pulled out a small medical patch from her kit. This is universal pain suppressant. Works on most carbon-based life forms. She moved closer, slowly, holding the patch where the dragon could see it. The massive creature watched her approach. When Nicole placed the patch on her scaled hide, the dragon's pupils dilated. Her breathing eased. She understood they were trying to help. One of the eggs cracked open. A small head emerged, bronze-scaled and confused. The hatchling made a weak chirping sound and tumbled out of its shell. Without thinking, Nicole scooped it up and wrapped it in her jacket. The creature was cold, shivering. They're cold-blooded as hatchlings, she said. They need warmth or they die. The mother dragon watched this. Then she did something that made Robert's throat tight. With the last of her strength, she pushed the 3 remaining eggs toward the humans, across the stone floor inch by inch until they rolled right up to Robert's feet. She's asking us, Robert said quietly. She's asking us to save them. Luis checked his scanner. We've got incoming ships. 3 of them, dropping from orbit. Krell signatures. The dragon's eye found Robert's face. She made another sound, and this time their translation software caught part of it. The word was ancient, from a language the Draknari hadn't spoken in centuries, but the meaning came through clear. Protect. Then her eye closed. The massive chest stopped moving. The silver dragon who had ruled these mountains died in her nest, trusting her children to 3 strangers from a species she had never met. Another egg cracked. Robert grabbed it as a tiny silver hatchling emerged. Luis caught the 3rd egg as it split open, revealing a dark-scaled creature with sharp eyes. The fourth egg opened last, and Nicole gently lifted out the smallest hatchling, a copper-colored female who struggled to breathe. "We need to move," Louise said urgently. "Those ships will be here in 10 minutes. Robert looked at the 4 baby dragons in their arms, then at their dead mother, then at the scanner showing 3 hostile ships approaching. They were supposed to be running surveys, mapping terrain, analyzing soil samples, not saving alien babies from organ-harvesting raiders. "Back to base," he ordered. "Double time. We protect them." They ran down the mountain with the hatchlings clutched against their chests. Behind them, the Krell ships landed near the nest. Ahead of them, their small research base offered the only shelter for 100 kilometers, and in their arms 4 baby dragons chirped and mewed, unaware that their entire species might depend on 3 humans who had no idea what they were doing. The bronze one in Nicole's arms looked up at her with golden eyes. It made a soft sound almost like a purr. Against all logic and regulation, Nicole felt her heart melt. "Don't worry, little one," she whispered. "We've got you." Behind them, the Krell found the empty nest and began hunting. The research base looked pathetic in the fading light. 3 prefab buildings, 1 small shield generator, and a landing pad barely big enough for their shuttle. Robert kicked open the door to the lab, and Nicole rushed inside with the hatchlings. Louise sealed the entrance behind them and activated every security measure they had. "Put them under the heat lamps," Nicole ordered, clearing equipment off a workbench. "Their body temperature is dropping fast." Robert placed the 2 hatchlings he carried under the medical warming lights. The bronze one immediately curled up and stopped shivering. The dark one stayed alert, watching everything with suspicious eyes. Nicole set down the silver hatchling, who started exploring immediately, while the tiny copper female wheezed with every breath. "This one's in trouble," Nicole said, running her scanner over the smallest hatchling. "Genetic respiratory defect. Her airways are partially collapsed. Without treatment, she'll suffocate within hours." "Can you fix it?" Robert asked. "Maybe, but I'm a biologist, not a surgeon, and definitely not a dragon surgeon." Louise stood at the window watching his motion sensors. "We've got movement out there. The Krell are tracking our path down the mountain. They'll be here within the hour." Robert pulled up the communication system and sent an emergency broadcast to the Colonial Survey Authority.
"Mayday from Survey Team Delta on Valdris 7. We have hostile contact with Krell raiders and are protecting 4 indigenous juveniles."
Request immediate assistance. He knew help wouldn't come in time. They were 3 months' travel from the nearest military outpost. Even at emergency speeds, rescue would take weeks. The bronze hatchling made a sound and Robert turned. The creature was looking right at him, head tilted. There was something unnervingly intelligent in those eyes. "They understand us," Nicole said softly. "Look at how they react to our voices. This isn't animal intelligence. They're sapient." The dark hatchling had moved to Louise and was watching him with the same intensity. The silver one sat near Nicole, chirping every time she spoke. Only the copper hatchling remained still, struggling to breathe. "We need to name them," Nicole said. "If we're going to save them, they deserve names." "The bronze one can be brass," Robert decided. "He seems strong." "The silver girl is Sterling," Nicole added, gently stroking the curious hatchling. "She's clever. This dark one's Onyx," Louise said. "He looks like he's planning my murder." Nicole looked at the smallest hatchling, fighting for every breath. "And she's Penny, small but valuable." A transmission crackled through their comm system. The voice that came through was distorted, half organic and half mechanical. "Human survey team. This is Krell Commander Grinder. You have stolen valuable genetic specimens. Return them immediately and your deaths will be quick." Robert grabbed the microphone. "Those aren't specimens. They're living beings. Their mother died defending them." Grinder laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Their mother is worth 50,000 credits in harvested materials. The juveniles are worth triple that alive. You have 1 hour to deliver them to the landing site, or we will take them from your corpses." The transmission ended. Sterling made a worried chirping sound. Brass moved closer to Robert's leg. Even Onyx looked uncertain. "We can't fight them," Louise said flatly. "We have 3 rifles and 1 security barrier. They have military-grade weapons and body armor." Nicole was working frantically on Penny, who had stopped breathing entirely. She grabbed a medical tube and carefully inserted it into the hatchling's throat, manually pumping air into her lungs. Seconds passed like hours. Then Penny gasped and started breathing again on her own. "There," Nicole whispered. "Stay with us, little one." Robert studied their defensive options. The base had a barrier that could withstand small arms fire for maybe 30 minutes. They had enough ammunition for a short firefight. But against professional raiders, they would lose, unless they had help. Luis scanned for any Draknari signals. If there are more of them out there, maybe we can call for help. Already tried. Nothing. That mother might have been the last one in this region. Sterling suddenly moved to a computer terminal and touched the screen with one small claw. Lines of code appeared, text in an ancient language that predated human space travel. The hatchling was accessing something. How is she doing that? Luis asked. Genetic memory, Nicole breathed. Some species can pass knowledge through DNA. She knows things her mother knew. Things her whole species knew. Sterling kept tapping, and suddenly a hologram appeared showing the mountain range. Dozens of points lit up in red throughout the peaks and valleys. Are those what I think they are? Robert asked. Nicole nodded slowly. Draknari nests. All empty, all dead. The Krell have been systematically hunting them to extinction. Brass made an angry sound, small flames sparking from his nostrils. Onyx's scales darkened even further. Sterling looked at them with liquid eyes that held understanding far beyond her few hours of life. They know, Nicole said. They know their entire species is dying. Outside, lights appeared in the darkness. Krell vehicles approaching across the valley floor. They had made good time. Robert looked at the 4 hatchlings, then at his team, then at the pitiful defenses they had. By every logical measure, they should hand over the creatures and save themselves. No one would blame them. These weren't even human children. But when he looked at Penny, struggling to breathe even with medical help, at Sterling, trying desperately to communicate, at Brass and Onyx, scared but trying to be brave, he couldn't do it. We hold here, Robert said. Luis, get those barriers at maximum power. Nicole, keep working on Penny. I'll try to find something, anything we can use as an advantage. They'll kill us, Luis said, but he was already moving to the defensive controls. Yeah, Robert agreed. They probably will. But at least we'll know we did the right thing. Sterling touched his hand with one small claw. The gesture was unmistakably grateful. Brass positioned himself between Robert and the door, a tiny guardian. Even Onyx moved to stand with them rather than hide. Nicole looked up from treating Penny. For what it's worth, I'm glad we saved them, even if this is how it ends. The Krell vehicle stopped outside their barrier range. Grinder's voice came through the comm again. Your hour is up, humans. This is your final chance. Robert picked up the microphone. Go to hell. You want them? You'll have to go through us. The laugh that came back was terrifying. With pleasure. The first weapons fire hit their barrier at the same moment Sterling activated something else on the computer. A signal broadcast into space on an ancient frequency. A call for help that would likely go unanswered, but they had to try. Energy blasts hammered their barrier for 3 straight minutes before Robert realized they were going to die here. The shield generator screamed as it burned through power reserves faster than expected. Luis fired back through the barrier gaps, taking down 1 Krell raider, but 3 more immediately took his place. Shield at 40%, Luis shouted over the weapons fire. We've got maybe 5 more minutes. Nicole had all 4 hatchlings huddled in the back room, trying to keep them calm as explosions shook the building. Penny was still breathing, barely. Sterling kept chirping urgently and pointing at the computer screen where ancient Draknari text scrolled past. She's trying to tell us something, Nicole called out. Something about the old nests in the mountains. Robert ducked as a blast took out their eastern sensor array. Unless those old nests have military equipment, I don't see how they help us. Sterling made a frustrated sound and physically grabbed Nicole's hand, dragging her to the screen. The hatchling tapped on a specific section of the map, a location about 2 kilometers north in the cliff system. Nicole read the translated text, and her eyes went wide. Robert, she's showing me a sanctuary. An ancient Draknari fortress built into the mountain. It's been there for thousands of years. And you think it still works? Luis asked skeptically as he changed ammunition magazines. Draknari technology was based on crystal matrices, no moving parts to break down. If the structure is intact, it might still have defensive systems. Nicole looked at the hatchlings. They remember it. In their genetic memory. They know how to activate it. The barrier flickered and died. Their generator had finally failed. Move now or we're dead, Robert ordered. Luis, cover our exit. Nicole, get the hatchlings. They burst out the back of the building and ran into the darkness. Luis fired behind them, keeping the Krell momentarily pinned. Brass and Onyx scrambled along on their own legs, surprisingly fast for newborns. Nicole carried Sterling and Penny in a makeshift sling. Krell raiders rounded the building and gave chase. Energy blasts lit up the night, turning rocks around them into superheated fragments. Luis took a hit to his shoulder and stumbled but kept running. Robert grabbed him and half carried him forward. The cliff face loomed ahead, dark and foreboding. Sterling chirped directions and Nicole followed, finding a narrow opening that no human would have noticed otherwise. They squeezed through into a tunnel carved from solid rock. Krell weapons fire echoed behind them as they ran deeper into the mountain. The tunnel opened into a massive chamber that took Robert's breath away. Crystal pillars held up a ceiling 50 meters high. Ancient carvings covered every surface, depicting Dreknari history in stunning detail. And everywhere technology hummed with dormant power. They built cities inside mountains, Nicole whispered in awe. Entire civilizations underground where they could protect their young. Brass touched one of the pillars and it blazed to life. Blue light spread through crystal veins in the walls, illuminating the chamber like dawn. Sterling joined him, placing her small claws on another pillar. More systems activated. Onyx found a third pillar and suddenly the entire fortress woke up. Incredible, Robert breathed. The hatchlings are the key. The fortress recognizes them as Dreknari and responds to their presence. Louis slumped against a wall, his shoulder wound bleeding badly. Great, we've got pretty lights. How does that stop the Krell? Sterling chirped and touched a specific carving. A holographic interface appeared showing the fortress layout. Defensive positions, energy barriers, and weapon systems that had been dormant for millennia now stood ready. She knows how to control it, Nicole realized. The genetic memory gives her the knowledge. She just needs to activate it. Grinder's voice echoed down the tunnel. Clever humans. But you've only delayed your deaths. We're coming in, and that stone tomb will be your grave. 12 Krell raiders entered the chamber with weapons raised. Grinder himself walked in last. A nightmare of cybernetic augmentation and organic tissue grafted together. Half his face was metal, one arm was a weapon platform, and his eyes glowed with predatory joy. There they are, he said. 4 perfect specimens and 3 foolish humans. I'll make millions from this haul. Robert stepped in front of the hatchlings. You'll have to go through me first. Gladly. Grinder raised his weapon arm, but before he could fire, Brass released a stream of flame that, while small, was hot enough to make the Krell commander step back. Onyx lunged at a nearby raider, tiny jaws clamping onto the armor and actually leaving marks. Sterling hit a control and an energy barrier snapped into place, protecting the group. The Krell opened fire, but their weapons couldn't penetrate the ancient shielding. Grinder snarled in frustration. Bring up the heavy disruptors. Tear this place apart if you have to. More Krell poured into the chamber. They brought equipment designed to breach fortifications. Luis tried to fight back but collapsed from blood loss. Nicole scrambled to treat him while keeping the hatchlings safe. Sterling worked frantically at the controls, activating defense after defense. Automated turrets emerged from the walls and fired on the Krell. Crystal barriers channeled the invaders into killing zones. The fortress itself became a weapon protecting its young. But there were too many Krell and only 4 infant dragons trying to control systems they barely understood. Grinder's forces pushed forward meter by meter. His heavy disruptor finally broke through the outer barrier. They were getting closer. We need to fall back deeper into the fortress, Robert shouted. Sterling, can you find a more defensible position? The silver hatchling chirped affirmative and led them down a side passage. They ran through corridors that hadn't seen life in centuries, following Sterling's instinctive knowledge of the layout. Behind them, Krell weapons tore apart ancient stone and crystal. They reached a central chamber with 4 raised platforms surrounding a massive crystal core. Sterling immediately climbed onto one platform. Brass took another. Onyx, understanding somehow, took the third. Nicole gently placed Penny, barely conscious, on the 4th. The moment all 4 hatchlings were in position, the entire fortress responded. Power that had been sleeping for millennia surged through crystal channels. The air itself seemed to vibrate with energy. Holographic displays appeared around each platform, showing information only the hatchlings could understand. What's happening? Luis asked weakly. They're linking with the fortress, Nicole said in amazement. This place was designed to be controlled by 4 Dreknari working together. It's a defense system meant to protect entire families. Grinder and his forces burst into the chamber and stopped. They could see the power building, feel the danger, but greed overwhelmed caution. Take them now before they activate whatever that is. The Krell charged. Robert and Nicole raised their weapons, knowing it was hopeless. Louise could barely stand. The hatchlings were just babies, even with ancient technology helping them. Then Sterling's eyes blazed with blue light. She made a sound, not a chirp, but a word in ancient Draknari that meant defend. The other 3 hatchlings echoed it, their voices blending into a harmonic that made the air shimmer. The fortress answered. Energy barriers appeared everywhere, separating the Krell from each other. Automated defenses activated with lethal precision. The crystal core released a pulse that overloaded every electronic system the Krell carried. Their cybernetic augmentations sparked and failed. Grinder himself screamed as his artificial parts shut down. Within seconds, the Krell threat was neutralized. Raiders lay unconscious or fled back through the tunnels. Grinder crawled toward the exit, his cybernetics smoking ruins. The hatchlings stepped down from their platforms, exhausted but alive. Penny was breathing easier now, as if the fortress itself had healed her while they were connected. Sterling walked to Robert and pressed her head against his leg, a gesture of trust and affection. We did it, Nicole said, hardly believing it. We actually did it. Luis managed a weak smile. 4 baby dragons just saved our lives. That's going to be a fun report to write. But Robert was looking at the fortress system still active around them. This isn't over. Grinder said he called for reinforcements. More Krell ships are coming. This fortress bought us time, but we can't hold out forever. Sterling made another sound and activated a holographic display. It showed space above the planet. Multiple contacts were indeed approaching. Large ships, heavily armed. They had won the battle, but the war was just beginning. 3 days passed in the ancient fortress while Nicole worked to keep Luis alive and the hatchlings fed. The wound in Luis's shoulder had gotten infected despite treatment. He developed a fever and spent most of his time unconscious. Nicole divided her attention between treating him and figuring out what baby dragons actually needed to eat. Robert stood at the entrance watching for Krell scouts while Sterling sat beside him. The silver hatchling had barely left his side since the battle. She would chirp softly and sometimes touch his hand with her nose. It reminded him of a loyal dog, except this dog could access ancient superweapons and would eventually grow large enough to swallow him whole. How's Luis? He asked when Nicole emerged from the medical chamber they had set up. Stable for now, but we need real medical supplies. This place has amazing defensive systems, but no medicine cabinet. Nicole sat down heavily. We're running out of food too. Our rations won't last more than a week, and I still haven't figured out the right nutrition mix for the hatchlings. Brass and Onyx were practicing flying in the main chamber. They could manage short glides now, their wings growing stronger each day. Penny sat with them but didn't try to fly. She was still the weakest, though her breathing had improved dramatically since entering the fortress. The distress signal we sent, Robert said. Any response yet? Nothing. We're too far from human space. Even if someone heard it, they won't reach us for weeks. Sterling suddenly stood up, her scales rippling with tension. She made a low warning sound. Brass and Onyx immediately stopped playing and moved into defensive positions. Even Penny perked up, alert. What is it? Robert asked, but Sterling was already running to the main control chamber. They followed and found her activating the long-range sensors. The holographic display showed new contacts entering the system. But these weren't Krell ships. The profiles were different, larger, more organic-looking in design. Could be more raiders, Nicole suggested. Different faction, maybe. Sterling made an excited chirping sound and pointed to the ships. Then she activated another display showing Draknari historical records. The ship designs matched ancient vessels from her species' past. Draknari, Robert breathed. Your distress call reached them. Your people are coming. The silver hatchling practically vibrated with excitement. Brass roared, a sound that was growing deeper each day. Onyx did something like a victory dance. Penny made happy chirping sounds, but Nicole was studying the displays more carefully. Robert, look at this. There's only one ship. A small one. And it's coming from outside the system, not from this planet. Meaning those aren't local Draknari. That dragon mother we found might have been the last one on this world. These are coming from somewhere else entirely. The ship entered orbit and broadcast a message on ancient frequencies. Sterling listened, then activated the fortress communication system. She couldn't speak, but she could transmit feelings, images, memories. The story of what happened played out in holographic form for the approaching ship to see. An answer came back in spoken Draknari, translated by the fortress systems. Hatchlings of Saritha, we hear your call. We are the survivors of Clan Ironwing. Your mother was our queen's sister. We fled the Krell attacks years ago. We did not know any young survived. Sterling transmitted more images showing Robert, Nicole, and Luis protecting them, showing the humans fighting Krell to save dragon lives. The voice from the ship changed tone, speaking now in accented but understandable human language. Humans who protect our young, we are coming to you. Prepare for landing. 20 minutes later, a Draknari ship settled into the valley outside the fortress. It was beautiful in a savage way. All curves and edges designed to look like a dragon in flight. A ramp extended and 7 Draknari emerged. They were magnificent and terrifying. Adult Draknari stood 4 meters tall with wingspans twice that. Their scales gleamed in shades of crimson, emerald, and midnight blue. They moved with predatory grace, each one a perfect killing machine evolved over millions of years. The lead Draknari was the largest, his scales dark red with white scars crisscrossing his body. He surveyed the fortress entrance with tactical eyes, then spotted Robert standing there with Sterling pressed against his leg. "I am Thorn," the dragon said, his voice like rumbling thunder. "War leader of the Ironwing survivors. You are the human who protected Saritha's children." Robert nodded, very aware that this creature could kill him without effort. "Robert Hayes, this is Nicole Grant. Luis Mendoza is inside injured." Thorn looked at Sterling, then at Robert, then back at Sterling. "My queen's niece stands with you by choice." This is unprecedented. Draknari young flee from all other species. They trust only their own kind. "We didn't give them much choice," Robert admitted. "Their mother was dying. The Krell were coming. We did what seemed right." Another Draknari stepped forward, smaller but with kind eyes. "I am Willow, clan healer. The human you mentioned is injured. May I see him?" Nicole had been hanging back, but at the offer of help she stepped forward eagerly. "Please, I'm a biologist, not a doctor. I'm doing my best, but he needs real treatment." Willow followed Nicole inside. Thorn continued studying Robert with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. "You fought Krell to protect children not of your species. You activated an ancient fortress to defend them. You called for help knowing you might die before it arrived. Why?" Robert thought about how to explain human nature to an alien warlord. "Where I come from, you don't let children suffer if you can help it. Doesn't matter whose children they are." Brass had crept forward during the conversation. Now he moved to stand beside Robert, looking up at Thorn defiantly. The adult dragon's eyes widened in surprise. "The bronze male claims you as family," Thorn said slowly. "He positions himself as your defender, though he is barely hatched." He looked at the other dragons with him. "I have never witnessed such a thing." Sterling chirped and transmitted more memories through the fortress systems. Images of Robert carrying her down the mountain, of Nicole treating Penny, of Luis defending them with his own body. The hatchlings had recorded everything, and now they shared it with their clan. The Draknari watched in silence. When the images ended, Thorn lowered his massive head in what was clearly a gesture of respect. "You are brave, Robert Hayes of humanity, and honorable. My clan owes you a debt that cannot be repaid." "I don't want repayment," Robert said. "I just want to keep them safe. Then we share a goal." Thorn looked toward orbit where Krell ships were gathering. "The raiders are massing for a major assault. They know we're here now. They will bring overwhelming force to claim the hatchlings and eliminate us all." "How many ships do they have?" "Our sensors count 12 warships. Enough to level this mountain if they choose. We have 1 ship and 7 warriors." Thorn's eyes burned with inner fire. "But we do not surrender. Ever." Nicole emerged with Willow, who was carrying Luis on a medical stretcher. The healer had already treated him with advanced Draknari medicine. Luis was conscious and looking much better. "These dragons have incredible medical technology," Nicole said excitedly. "It's all biological, grown rather than manufactured. Willow says Luis will be fully healed in 2 days." Luis looked at the assembled dragons and managed a weak salute. "Thanks for the assist. Though I have to ask, what's our actual plan here? Because being heroic is great and all, but I'd prefer to survive too." Thorn made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Practical human. I like you." He looked at Robert. "There is a way we might survive this, but it requires trust between our species, and it requires you to let us take the hatchlings to safety." Robert felt Sterling press harder against his leg. Brass moved even closer. Onyx and Penny had come to the entrance and were watching nervously. The thought of the hatchlings leaving made his chest tight. "Where would you take them?" he asked. "To our hidden colony 3 systems away, where the last few hundred Draknari survive in secret. The hatchlings would be safe there. They would grow strong. They would live. And us? You would come too," Thorn said. "You have proven yourselves protectors of our young. That is a sacred bond in Draknari culture. You would be welcomed as clan members." Nicole looked torn. "What about the Krell? We can't just run and let them keep hunting your people." Thorn's smile showed teeth designed to tear apart prey. "Oh, we won't run. Once the hatchlings are safe, we will make the Krell regret ever coming to this system. But first we must survive the next few hours. Their assault fleet will arrive soon." As if summoned by his words, alarms blared throughout the fortress. Sterling rushed to the sensors and transmitted what she saw. 12 Krell warships dropping from orbit. Hundreds of raiders. Enough firepower to destroy everything in this valley. Robert looked at the 4 hatchlings who had come to trust him. At Nicole and Luis, who had risked everything. At Thorn and the Draknari warriors who had answered a desperate call for help. Somehow, impossibly, they had become a family. "Then we hold until we can evacuate," Robert said. "Together," Thorn nodded approval. "Together. Humans and Draknari united in defense of our young. Let the Krell come. They will learn why you don't threaten dragon children." The fortress systems powered up to full strength as the Krell fleet descended. The battle for survival was about to begin. Fire rained from the sky as Krell warships bombarded the valley. The ancient fortress shields held, but the ground outside turned to molten glass under the sustained assault. Robert watched through the sensor feeds as landing craft disgorged hundreds of raiders armed with heavy weapons. "They're not playing around anymore," Luis said from his medical bed, already trying to get up despite Willow's protests. "That's a full invasion force." Thorn stood in the command chamber with his warriors spread throughout the fortress. Sterling and the other hatchlings remained on their control platforms, working the defensive systems with increasing skill. Every day they grew larger and more capable, but they were still children facing an army. "The shields will hold for perhaps 1 hour under this bombardment," Thorn calculated. "After that, they will breach the fortress and it becomes close combat." 7 dragons and 3 humans against hundreds of Krell, Nicole said. "Those aren't good odds." "No," Thorn agreed. "They are not, which is why we must shift the odds." He activated a communication panel and transmitted a message into space. Not on Krell frequencies, but on open channels that anyone could intercept. The message was simple and in multiple languages. "To any who receive this, we are Draknari of Clan Ironwing and humans of Earth, united in defense of children. The Krell Consortium attempts to harvest young for their organ trade. We stand against this evil. If we fall here, know that we fought with honor. If any hear this and can help, we are in the Valdris system." Robert stared at him. "You just broadcast our position to everyone in range." "Yes, because the Krell are already here in force. We cannot hide anymore, but perhaps others will hear. Perhaps others will care." A massive explosion rocked the fortress. One of the shield generators had failed. Krell forces immediately pushed toward that section. Thorn's warriors moved to intercept, breathing fire and using claws to devastating effect in the narrow corridors. The raiders had weapons, but the dragons had natural armor and centuries of combat experience. Robert grabbed his rifle and moved to help. Nicole stayed with the hatchlings, who were frantically rerouting power to compensate for the lost generator. Luis finally managed to stand, grabbing his own weapon despite still being weak. "I'm not sitting this one out," he said firmly. The first wave of Krell hit the compromised section and met Robert's group holding a choke point. Human weapons fire combined with dragon flames created a killing zone. Raiders fell, but more kept coming. They had numbers and were willing to spend lives to achieve their goal. Brass suddenly abandoned his control platform and flew toward the fighting. Despite Nicole's shout, the bronze hatchling unleashed a stream of fire that caught a group of Krell from behind. His flame was hotter now, more focused. The raiders screamed as their armor melted. "The young one fights," Thorn said with approval. "He has the heart of a warrior." But Brass's intervention drew attention. Krell forces targeted him specifically, recognizing him as one of the valuable specimens. A raider fired a net designed to capture him. Brass dodged, but barely. He was fast, but still learning to fly. Robert ran toward the hatchling, firing to provide cover. He reached Brass and physically grabbed him, pulling the young dragon behind a crystal pillar. "Stay back! You're what they want!" Brass chirped angrily but obeyed. His golden eyes met Robert's, and in that moment they understood each other perfectly. Brass wanted to fight, wanted to protect his family like Robert did. But he was too young, too valuable to risk. The battle raged for 30 minutes. The Draknari warriors were incredible fighters, each one worth 10 raiders in combat. But they took wounds. Thorn had burns across his right wing. Another dragon named Ember had lost 2 claws to an energy blade. They couldn't sustain this forever. Then something unexpected happened. The Krell bombardment from orbit suddenly stopped. The raiders on the ground received new orders and began withdrawing in confusion. Through the sensor feeds, Robert saw the Krell warships repositioning, turning toward something approaching the system. Sterling activated long-range scanners and broadcast the image to everyone. Ships were dropping out of hyperspace. Lots of ships. But not Krell vessels, those are human ships, Nicole said in disbelief. How? We're 3 months from the nearest colony. The lead ship broadcast on all frequencies. This is Captain Peter Walsh of the Colonial Defense Force frigate Relentless. We received a distress signal about humans defending alien children from slavers. Figured we'd come take a look. Behind the military frigate came more ships, civilian vessels, retrofitted with whatever weapons their crews could find. Mining ships, trading vessels, even a passenger liner. Dozens of them, another voice came through. This is the independent trader Phoenix Rising. We heard your message. Nobody messes with kids on our watch. More voices joined in. This is the mining ship Iron Fortune. We're with you. Colony Transport New Hope standing by. Survey vessel Pathfinder here. Let's show these raiders what happens when you threaten children. Robert felt his throat tighten. These ships had come from all over, responding to a plea to protect young ones they'd never met. It was so utterly human that he almost laughed. Of course they came. Of course they did. Captain Walsh's voice took on a harder edge. Krell vessels, this is your only warning. Leave this system immediately or face the consequences. The Krell commander responded with typical arrogance. You have no authority here, human. This is consortium business. Interfere and you declare war. Then consider war declared. All ships weapons free. Show them what humanity thinks of people who hunt children. The human fleet opened fire with everything they had. They were outgunned and outclassed by the Krell warships, but they had numbers and, more importantly, they had something to fight for. Mining lasers meant for cutting asteroids tore through Krell hulls. Improvised missiles from colony transports found their targets. The military frigate led the charge with professional precision. Thorn watched in amazement. They came. Your people came because you asked for help protecting our young. That's what we do, Robert said simply. But the battle in space was only part of the fight. The Krell ground forces, now cut off from orbital support, became desperate. Grinder himself led a final assault on the fortress, determined to take at least the hatchlings before retreating. All of you back to the ship, he roared at his forces. But bring me those specimens first. The raiders surged forward with suicidal determination. The Draknari warriors formed a defensive line, wounded but unbowed. Robert, Nicole, and Luis stood with them. And, behind them all, 4 hatchlings who had become the symbol of cooperation between 2 species. Sterling made a decision. She abandoned her control platform and transmitted a command to the fortress. The entire structure began to hum with power. She was activating something, some system that hadn't been used in thousands of years. What is she doing? Nicole asked Willow. The healer's eyes widened. She's activating the sanctuary protocol. It turns the entire fortress into a weapon, but at great cost. The structure may not survive. Sterling, no, Robert shouted. But the silver hatchling was determined. Brass, Onyx, and Penny joined her. All 4 hatchlings linked together, channeling the fortress's entire power grid. The crystals throughout the structure blazed with light bright enough to hurt human eyes. The Draknari had to shield their faces. Then the fortress released its ultimate defense. A wave of pure energy exploded outward, knocking everyone to the ground. It passed harmlessly through Robert, Nicole, Luis, and the Draknari. But every Krell it touched fell unconscious instantly, their cybernetic systems overloaded and burned out. Within seconds, hundreds of raiders lay motionless. Grinder himself collapsed, his mechanical augmentations sparking and dying. The ground assault was finished. The hatchlings stepped down from their platforms, exhausted and barely able to stand. Sterling collapsed and Robert caught her. She was burning hot, her scales dim from power expenditure, but she was alive. They all were. In space, the Krell fleet had suffered enough. Their commander ordered a retreat and the warships fled into hyperspace, damaged and defeated. The human fleet held position, making sure they actually left. Captain Walsh transmitted to the fortress. "Ground team, this is Walsh. The Krell are running. You're safe now." Robert looked around at the aftermath. The fortress was damaged but standing. The Draknari warriors were wounded but alive. Luis, Nicole, and himself had survived against impossible odds. And 4 baby dragons slept peacefully, having saved them all. Thorn approached and placed one massive claw gently on Robert's shoulder. "You humans, you are strange and soft and weak in so many ways. Yet you possess something my people have lost. You still know how to hope, how to believe that others will answer when you call for help." "We're pack animals," Robert said, gently stroking Sterling's unconscious form. "We protect our own. And I guess we decided these little ones count as our own now." Outside, human ships began landing in the valley alongside the Draknari vessel. Crews emerged, wanting to see the dragon hatchlings they had crossed the stars to protect. They brought medical supplies, food, and most importantly, they brought proof that the galaxy still had decent people in it. Nicole was crying as she held Penny, who stirred slightly in her arms. "We did it. We actually did it." "Yeah," Luis agreed, slumped against a wall but smiling. 3 humans and 4 dragons held off an army until the cavalry arrived. That's definitely going in the history books. Thorn looked at his warriors, at the humans, at the sleeping hatchlings. "This is only the beginning. The Krell will not forget this defeat. They will seek revenge." Robert met his eyes steadily. "Then we face them together. Your people and mine, because apparently we're family now." The war leader showed his teeth in what might have been a smile. "Yes, family. The Draknari have not had allies in 1,000 years. I think we chose well." Sterling opened her eyes and chirped weakly at Robert. He understood without words. She was asking if everyone was safe, if her siblings were okay, if her strange new family of humans and dragons had survived. "Everyone's safe," Robert promised her. "You did good, little one. You did real good." The silver hatchling closed her eyes again and slept, trusting that the promise would be kept. 6 months had changed everything. Where there had been only a damaged fortress and a handful of survivors, now a thriving settlement stretched across the valley. Human prefab buildings stood beside Draknari crystal structures, creating an architecture that belonged to both species and neither. Children of 2 worlds played together in the streets, learning each other's languages and customs. Robert walked through the settlement in the early morning light, watching the sun rise over the mountains. Sterling walked beside him, now nearly 2 meters tall with a wingspan that cast a shadow over them both. She had grown fast as Draknari did, but her personality remained the same. Curious, intelligent, and fiercely loyal to the human who had first wrapped her in a thermal blanket. "Big day today," Robert said, and Sterling chirped agreement. She spoke some human words now, though her vocal structure made it difficult. Mostly, they communicated through the translation devices the 2 species had developed together, combining human technology with Draknari biological systems. Nicole emerged from the medical center with Penny flying beside her. The smallest hatchling had become the settlement's mascot, adored by everyone. Her respiratory problems were fully healed thanks to combined human and Draknari medical techniques. She was still smaller than her siblings, but healthy and full of energy. "Ready for the big speech?" Nicole asked Robert. "As ready as I'll ever be." He looked up as Brass and Onyx glided overhead, practicing aerial maneuvers with young Draknari from Thorn's clan. The 4 original hatchlings had become a bridge between species, equally comfortable with humans and dragons. Today, representatives from the Galactic Council were arriving. The same council that had ignored Draknari, pleas for help against the Krell for decades. The same council that had declared humanity too primitive to join their organization. Now both species were demanding answers and changes. Luis approached from the security center, now fully healed and promoted to head of Joint Human Draknari Defense Forces. "The council ships just entered orbit. They're bringing a full delegation. Guess our little fight made some noise. Saving an endangered species and dismantling a major slaving operation tends to do that," Nicole said dryly. The delegation landed an hour later. Ambassador Kenji Sato represented humanity, a career diplomat who had been working with Robert to present their case. With him came Director Amanda Foster from the Colonial Survey Authority, the woman whose decision to send reinforcements had saved them all. From the council came representatives of 6 species. They looked around the settlement with barely concealed surprise. The mix of human and Draknari living and working together was something they had never seen before. "This is unprecedented," said the Zenthi representative, a being that looked like a floating crystal. 2 species with no prior contact forming a functional society in months. "Turns out shared trauma and mutual respect go a long way," Robert replied. Thorn emerged from the clan hall, his scars healed but still visible. Behind him came Willow and the other surviving Draknari warriors. They had been joined by more of their people, refugees from the hidden colony who were slowly returning now that it was safe. "Honored Council," Thorn rumbled, "you come to observe what desperation created. For generations my people begged for help against Krell slavers. We were told it was an internal matter, that the council could not interfere." The council representatives shifted uncomfortably. The Zenthi spoke. "The Krell Consortium was a member in good standing. We had no evidence of illegal activity. You had our testimony," Thorn said, his voice hard. "You had evidence of entire clans disappearing. You chose not to see because looking would have been inconvenient." Ambassador Sato stepped forward. "Which is why we're proposing changes to council law. The Valdris Accords named for this world where 2 species proved that intervention can save lives." He activated a holographic display showing the proposed changes. New laws allowing humanitarian intervention, protections for endangered species, severe penalties for trafficking in sapient beings. Most importantly, a coalition defense force that could respond to threats like the Krell without political delays. These changes would fundamentally alter council structure. Another representative objected. "This is too much too fast." Sterling stepped forward then. She was young by Draknari standards, barely adolescent, but she had earned respect. When she spoke through her translator, everyone listened. "When my mother died, she gave us to strangers, humans she had never met who owed her nothing. She made that choice because she saw something in them, the willingness to help without calculating cost or benefit. The council failed my people because you calculated. These humans acted." Brass landed beside her with Onyx and Penny joining them. The 4 hatchlings stood together, a living symbol of what was possible. "We are alive because someone cared more about doing what was right than what was convenient," Brass added, his voice deeper now as he matured. "If the council cannot do the same, then perhaps the council should not lead." The statement hung in the air. It was close to a challenge and everyone knew it. Humanity and the Draknari were prepared to go their own way if necessary, forming an alliance that didn't need council approval. The Zenthi representative was silent for a long moment. Then it surprised everyone. "You speak truth, young one. The council has become complacent. Perhaps it takes new blood to remember why we formed the council in the first place. To protect the weak, to stop evil, to ensure no species stands alone." Other representatives began nodding. The tide was shifting. Over the next 3 days, negotiations continued. The Valdris Accords were refined and eventually accepted with near-unanimous support. The Krell Consortium was officially disbanded, its leaders facing war crimes tribunals. Reparations were established for the Draknari, and both humanity and the Draknari were granted full council membership. But more importantly, 7 other species approached the human Draknari alliance requesting protection treaties. Word had spread about what happened on Valdris 7. About humans who crossed the stars to protect children not their own. About dragons who welcomed strange aliens as family. It resonated throughout the galaxy. On the final night before the council delegation departed, Robert stood at Saritha's memorial. They had built it on the cliff where she died, a structure of human steel and Draknari crystal showing a mother dragon with 4 eggs. Nicole and Luis joined him there along with Thorn and his warriors. "She would be proud," Thorn said quietly. "Her children live. Her species survives. And she did what no Draknari leader had done in millennia. She trusted another species completely. We were the lucky ones," Robert said. "We got to be the ones she trusted." Sterling, Brass, Onyx, and Penny arrived, now too large to perch on human shoulders but still treating the 3 humans as their primary family. They gathered around the memorial in silence. "Thank you," Sterling said in careful English. "For everything. For risking your lives. For not walking away. For making us family." Nicole wiped tears from her eyes. "You were worth it." Every second of fear, every moment of doubt. You were worth it. Below them, the settlement glowed with light from both species. Human children were learning to read Draknari history. Young dragons were studying human engineering. Scientists from both civilizations were collaborating on projects neither could have imagined alone. It was messy and complicated and sometimes frustrated everyone involved. It was also beautiful. Luis broke the solemn mood with a laugh. So any regrets? About becoming dragon parents? Robert thought about it. The terror of that first night. The desperate battle against impossible odds. The moment he thought they would all die in the fortress. The fear every time the hatchlings were in danger. Not even one, he said honestly. Thorn placed a massive claw on Robert's shoulder, gentle despite its size. My people have a saying. Blood makes you related, but loyalty makes you family. You 3 humans earned your place in Clan Ironwing through fire and courage. You will always have a home among the Draknari. And you'll always have allies among humanity, Ambassador Sato added, having joined them. What happened here changed both our species. We were isolated, alone in the galaxy. Now we're learning that we don't have to be. Penny flew up and perched on Nicole's shoulder, small enough still to manage it. She nuzzled Nicole's cheek, making the biologist smile through her tears. We should get back, Nicole said. There's a joint cultural celebration tonight. Apparently, the Draknari traditional fire dance combined with human music is something that needs to be seen to be believed. They walked down from the memorial together, 2 species joined by 4 baby dragons who had needed saving, and 3 humans who couldn't walk away. Behind them, Saritha's memorial caught the last rays of sunset, the crystal elements making it glow from within. Years later, when historians studied the formation of the Galactic Defense Alliance, they would point to Valdris 7 as the turning point. When 2 species proved that cooperation across vast differences was possible, when humanity showed the galaxy that protecting the innocent transcended all boundaries, when the Draknari learned to trust again. But for Robert, Nicole, and Luis, it was simpler than that. They had found 4 baby dragons who needed help. They gave it. Everything else followed from that single choice. Sterling visited Robert in his office years later, now fully grown and magnificent. She was an ambassador herself, working to build bridges between species throughout the galaxy. I've been thinking about that first night, she said. When we were cold and scared and you wrapped me in that blanket. You didn't know if we'd survive, if help would come, if any of it would matter. No, Robert admitted. We didn't know. We just knew we had to try. My mother knew, Sterling said softly. In her final moments, she saw you coming. And she knew her children would survive. Not because you were strong or prepared, but because you were human, because you couldn't do anything else. She touched her nose to his hand, a gesture she had done since she was small enough to fit in his arms. Thank you for being exactly who you are, she said. Robert looked out his window at the thriving city below. Human and Draknari children played in the parks. Scientists collaborated in the labs. Ships from a dozen species landed daily, seeking to learn from what had been built here. All of it traced back to one desperate act of compassion. Your mother couldn't protect you, Robert said. But she made sure someone would. She chose to trust us with the most precious thing she had. We just tried to be worthy of that trust. You were, Sterling said. You are, every single day. Outside, the twin suns of Valdris 7 set over a world transformed. Where a dragon had died alone, now 2 species lived together. Where children had nearly perished, now they thrived. Where hatred and fear had reigned, now hope flourished. The dragon couldn't protect her young, but humanity could and did, and in doing so changed the galaxy forever. Some stories end with tragedy, some with triumph. This one ended with family, formed not through blood but through choice, through sacrifice, through the simple act of caring when it would have been easier to walk away. And that made all the difference.